Coming up on the next edition of Power and Politics, former President Donald Trump's historic hush money trial continues as the prosecution presents its case. Meanwhile, President Biden in Tampa, where he attacked Florida's 6-week abortion ban, which takes effect May 1st. Hello and welcome to another edition of Power and Politics. I'm your host, Frank Cipolla. Power and Politics is a weekly, unbiased look at the top stories affecting the state, with a special emphasis on the psychology behind the decisions and issues that affect our lives. We want to take a moment to say hello to our many viewers watching, as they do every week, on stations throughout the state, including stations in Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville, Pensacola, Tallahassee, and elsewhere. I am joined today, as I am every week, by my co-host, Emmy Award-winning political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi.
Always great to be here, Frank.
Former President Donald Trump's hush money trial continues, with the prosecution laying out its case last week, with more to come this week, of course. Doctor, what is the psychology behind this specifically? In other words, what is the president thinking? What are the jurors thinking at this moment? What is the prosecution thinking at this moment?
Well, Frank, I've been an expert witness many times, actually, in federal court, okay? And usually what the defendant, that would be Donald J. Trump, of course, what the defendant tries to do is to say in so many words that they're really not part of the scheme, they're really not part of the crime. And here we have the prosecution starting out saying that Donald J. Trump was involved in this conspiracy to falsify business records, deliberately falsify records, so that his affairs with Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal and whoever else does not come to light, and interfere with the election in doing so.
Let me play the other side for people who might be thinking about this right now. He's the head of a major corporation. You know, sometimes the decisions don't go up that high. They're done by underlings. And I was speaking with the CEO the other day, and he said, 90% of the decisions don't reach my desk. They're resolved before they get there.
Well, that's why the prosecution here has called their number one witness, in my view. That's David Pecker, who ran, of course, the National Enquirer. And he's basically painting the picture of Donald Trump being involved in every aspect of this scheme to not let the voters know that he was involved in these relationships.
Yeah, listen, Donald Trump, like any politician, is a media animal.
Right.
Before he was president, obviously, he was a reality show star and a businessman and so on. He craves the spotlight, as every politician does. Here he has to sit very quietly and has posted some things that might be inappropriate. The judge will decide either way. But let's get into the psychology of this gag order that he's ruling on. Can Donald Trump, sitting there at that trial every day without an outlet to express himself, control that? As a psychologist, can he?
I think he's going to have trouble controlling it, but I think there's a bigger psychology here. And I think the big picture is that it's a sideshow itself. It's almost like we have a trial, and then we have an additional sideshow, and that is the gag order. I mean, what Donald Trump says continuously as this trial unravels is going to be a real show in itself. And what does the judge do? The judge is in a tough spot. Does he keep escalating the fines? Does he actually threaten with jail time? It's going to be a real show, and this is where it's going. It's going to be a nonstop event, in my view.
All right, another big story this week. The Senate passed that aid package to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Mike Johnson somehow got this through the House into the Senate. The president's expected to sign at any moment. How does that work out in the House of Representatives, where he's trying to keep all the cats in one place?
Well, he's trying to keep everybody in place, but I think what happened to the speaker here is that he realized that the United States is actually getting a lot for its money. When we put all of this money into and resources into Ukraine, we're getting something back from that. And what we're getting them to fight the war that we might be fighting if Putin just marches through Ukraine and into Poland or wherever. And I think he realized that it was time to step it up. And he did.
I'm curious after this. I mean, they're already talking about vacating the speakership based on this, because he needed Democratic help to pass this. It will be interesting to see what happens going forward.
I think the Democrats might help him, because the small minority, the extremists, really are are being pushed back. They're being pushed back a lot in the House right now.
All right, now it's time for one of the regular segments on our show, a commentary from Dr. Bart Rossi that we call the Rossi Rant.
Well, Frank, I'd like to go off today on something that's really quite simple to try to understand, and that's freedom. Freedom itself. What is it? And here in Florida, we have a situation where we have laws saying that the government is going to be telling women what to do with regard to their bodies. That's a big issue, of course, coming up with the abortion issue. And we have books that are being banned here in Florida. We have a very controversial issue. We have the Don't Say Gay law. And now a bill has just been passed whereby we will have religious counselors in the school system. And we've talked about this many times. But it seems to me that what we have here in Florida now is more and more government telling people what they can do and what they can't do. It's almost like we're going in the direction of less freedom, but we have the governor and the legislature saying that this is a freedom state. Well, how is it a freedom state when the government is gaining more and more control over us and telling us what to do? And it brings up the whole question, of course, of socialism. Well, socialism really is the government telling people what to do. To me, I think that there's a real big question here in Florida about freedom and what it all is.
And that will all be resolved as we go forward, I'm sure.
We'll see how it unfolds in the election as well.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Coming up, President Biden visits Tampa to deliver a speech in support of reproductive care, specifically abortion rights, when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I'm Frank Cipolla, joined by political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi. This Wednesday, Florida's 6-week abortion ban goes into effect. And ahead of that, President Biden campaigning on former President Trump's home turf with a speech in Tampa on abortion rights. Biden taking jabs at both Trump and Governor Ron DeSantis. Doctor, is abortion rights an issue that will resonate this time around come November?
Well, Frank, I think it will. But I think the Democrats have to understand that their messaging has been pretty poor for a long time down here in Florida and across the country in a lot of ways. They need to link this abortion issue with freedom and choice and make it a dynamic issue, not a flat issue where it's just, I'm pro-choice or I'm not. They need to be really messaging this with regard to what I said in my rant today relating to freedom and what women's rights should be. And I don't know if they're going to be good enough to really carry it through, but that's what they need to do.
Let's get into the psychology, if we can, of President Biden. Here's what I'm saying. He is a man of faith. He talks about going to church. He does go to church frequently. He's a Christian. His church does not sanction abortion.
Right.
But at the same time, he's out there talking about that women need the right to have an abortion and so on. How does he square that in his head? There's a lot of people of faith in this state. How does he square that in his head when we discuss that?
Well, Frank, the psychology here is that women should have their choice. That's how he gets around that. And that actually is part of even his Catholic faith as well. I mean, there's the Catholic view of the world, but each individual has to also make their own choices within the church. Many people abide by the strict views of the church. Some move away from a lot of those rules and regulations, let's call them. But Biden really is saying, I have my view, and women should have their personal view on this.
In some way, he has resolved this in his head and can make speeches on the rights of that. Okay, Governor DeSantis signing into law a controversial bill this week that allows volunteer chaplains to counsel students in public schools in Florida. We've talked about this extensively. This is a pet peeve of yours.
Oh yeah, this really.
It's somewhat of a slippery slope because how do you define a chaplain at this point? And one of the Satanic Temple members says he'd like to also have an opportunity to talk with public school kids in Florida. Look, again, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, Frank, we've talked about, what religious counselors? Are we going to have the nuns in the schools, the rabbis, the Mormons? But now I'd like to take a different slant on this, okay? So we have all of these kids in the school with many mental health problems. As we said last week, 1 out of every 5 in high school has suicidal ideation. So now we're bringing religious counselors into the school system who may know nothing about mental health. They may
They're
know
not
about
trained to do so.
They may know the Bible or the Koran or something else, but they don't know about the traits and characteristics of suicide or depression or agitation or being bullied. They may not know anything about that, but they're going to be the counselors for the kids who have mental health problems. It's exactly the wrong way to go. It's just such a terrible law, in my view, as a psychologist, that it really should be scrutinized and rejected going forward.
Opening up the politics of this. Why is this a winner, or why does Governor Ron DeSantis believe this is a winner when it's going to be more complicated? I'm sure it's going to be challenged in the courts and so on.
The message here is probably that we should have white Christian counselors in the school system. It's not being said, but that's probably the meaning of this, so that we have religion in the school. We have Sunday school in the public school, as we've said here before. That seems to be a winning argument for the right, for the very conservative, and that's the road that the governor has taken by signing this.
All right, Governor DeSantis also signing into law this week a measure mandating that the evils and dangers of communism be taught in public schools in grades K through 12. Listen, we all agree communism is not good. Can a child at that young age process all of that? And why are we teaching communism and at the same time not really giving a full view of slavery, which has been, as far as the curriculum is concerned, sort of diminished a bit?
Well, first off, on communism and the philosophy of communism in grade school or even middle school, well, we should talk about communism and other forms of political intrigue, if you will, in high school. I mean, that's okay. High school, kids can absorb it. But you need to have a certain age for absorbing these types of complexities, okay? And I think that this is just a political stunt. This law is just out there for politics.
Well, you're a psychologist. Is a child who might be as young as, I don't know, 8 years old, 10 years old, able to process the political aspects of communism, what it entails, and so on and so forth, even if it's, for lack of a better description, dumbed down so they can understand it?
No, definitely not. It just doesn't make any good sense. I mean, you ought to be at least in your late teens or later teens to try to absorb this. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's almost like the politicians here are trying to say, hey, we're anti-communism, you know?
As a psychologist, is it something that could scare a young child?
I'm not too worried about being scared, but I would say confused. Why? What? I mean, what are they listening to? What are they trying to promote? And if you're 8 or 9, as you say, or 10, it's something that would be confusing in many cases.
Okay. Interesting. We've talked about the bills he was supposed to sign, and he signed those last two that we discussed. So it should be an interesting year. I'm sure that first one, which we discussed with regard to chaplains in schools, is going to be challenged in the courts. Might end up in the Supreme Court.
It might. Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a break. When we come back, the always popular sunshine or showers segment, when we see who enjoyed a week of sunshine and who got caught without an umbrella, when Power in Politics continues. Welcome back to Power in Politics. If you've lived in Florida even a day, you know the weather can change on a dime. So every week, we span the state to find out who enjoyed the warm rays of sunshine and who got caught in the rain. It's time now for the always popular segment, Sunshine or Showers. And we start with the sunny day. Who's in the sunshine for you?
Well, Frank, this is a sunny day for Congress, okay? So I'm putting bipartisanship into the sunshine because a lot of Republicans and Democrats voted for the aid to Ukraine. It was the right move, as we have just said. We're getting a lot for our money. It's good that both sides see this. And I think that we need more compromise. You know, we've talked here a lot about the art of compromise. This was a big compromise and a big development. And I think that both sides should be in the sunshine for bipartisanship.
You know, when I was in college, they taught that politics was, and you just mentioned it, the art of compromise.
Yeah.
And we talked about Mike Johnson earlier in the show. He's between a rock and a hard place, but he did, for all intents and purposes, what had to be done.
He did the right thing, and it's probably going to help him by making the right choice.
All right.
So, give me, who do you have in the sunshine?
I'm putting Governor Ron DeSantis in the sunshine this week. I'm putting him in the sunshine for this particular reason. Ron DeSantis, in a speech in Southwest Florida this week, announced that next year he's committed to a $1.5 billion restoration package for the Everglades.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I was a reporter in Florida, I did a investigative report on the Everglades. About Lake Okeechobee, about the sugar company influence in that area. Alligator Alley actually stops some of the drainage from the Everglades. But he's saying, look, I'm going to spend $1.5 billion if the legislature goes along to restore the Everglades. And listen, when you think of Florida, you think of Disney World, right?
Right.
You think of the nightlife in Miami, and you think of the Everglades.
Right.
It's an important part not only for tourism, but also for ecology. So Ron DeSantis is in the sunshine for me this week. Okay.
Well, it's a good one. Yeah, I like it.
every sunshiny day, what
I like
happens?
it. I like
3
it.
o'clock in the afternoon, especially during the summer, it starts to rain. So who's in the showers this week?
I have heavy showers, Frank.
Heavy showers.
Heavy showers for the Supreme Court. Why is it taking so long to make a decision on presidential immunity? It makes no sense. You don't have to be an attorney. You don't have to be a psychologist. You only need to be a person with some common sense. You can't have a president have full immunity, steal $100 million or $200 million a week from the Treasury, and then say, "Oh, I'm immune," or kill your opponents. It makes no sense. So why are they taking so long? It's a real mystery. And is there anyone on the Supreme Court who would say, yes, for presidential immunity?
We're going to find out because
We will find out.
the oral arguments are this week. Just to give some perspective to this, in the 1950s, they established that the president, while he's in office, is immune from prosecution, not when he's out of office. They're deciding whether the president, whatever he does while he's in office, is immune for a lifetime after that.
It's just so broad. It doesn't make any sense. And common sense should dictate here, and it doesn't seem like it's prevailing at all.
All right.
But who do you have now for your showers?
Very well done. We have practiced this.
We're practicing.
Well
We're
done.
working hard on this.
I'm putting the Democratic Party in Miami-Dade County in the showers this week, and I'll tell you why. It's one of the most Democratic counties in the state, and it has been losing Democratic votes over the last 2 presidential elections, and they can't get their act together. Nikki Fried, who is the Democratic state chairperson, she's been trying to organize it in such a way where they can focus on the Democrat. You need a healthy Democratic and Republican Party, by the way, to have a good discourse when it comes to politics. And they can't seem to get their act together when it comes to Miami-Dade County. So they are in the showers this week for me.
Well, they need to step it up. They do.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we return, a commentary by yours truly titled Let's Be Frank when Power and Politics continues. Welcome back to Power and Politics. I've talked about this before on this show, about how presidential polls so far out from Election Day mean nothing. In politics, a month is a lifetime, never mind several months. A million things can happen between now and Election Day. And as far as what is happening now, or has happened, think about it for a moment. What seems so important at this moment may or may not even come to mind by the time you cast your ballot. Americans as a whole have short attention spans. The impeachment of then President Trump, although very significant in historical terms, now seems light years away. President Biden's mishandling of the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Afghanistan probably has already been forgotten by 90% of the American populace. Most young people don't read history or watch a regular newscast. Young parents are too busy to engage in the everyday news cycle, and millions more are just trying to make ends meet. I bring this up because the latest chatter lighting up the all-news cable stations is how much money is being raised by the president and the presumptive Republican nominee. Donald Trump is apparently fallen behind the president by $75 million, as much of it is being diverted to pay for his legal fees. In the last reporting cycle, Trump had 270,000 fewer unique donors. Whatever a unique donor is, you get the picture. Voting for president is not about unique donors. It comes down to your gut. You can lose a presidential election having outspent your opponent by a mile. Just ask Hillary Clinton. Without this inside baseball chatter, the all-news commentators, and they are delivering commentary, would have nothing to talk about. The latest presidential poll shows a tight race, but is it? I have talked before about how I believe the current polling process is flawed. People have cell phone numbers from states they no longer live in. They are more prone to withhold information or to answer to the contrary. No one knows for sure how the vote will go until we count the votes. Up until then, it's just more food to feed those who live and breathe politics. As of this moment, Election Day is 6.5 months away. This might be a good time to start paying attention. Read about where the 2 candidates stand. But analyze every single poll, it's just not worth it. We'll be right back. That's it for this week's edition of Power and Politics. On behalf of my co-host, political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, and the fine folks working behind the scenes, thanks for joining us. As always, we'd like to know what you think. Visit us at powerandpolitics.tv or email us at info@powerandpolitics.tv. We'll see you again a week from now at this time and on this same station. Have a great week.